Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode in our webinar series. Hello, Dr. Steady. By the way, my name is Dr. Laura Varden. I am Dean of the DNA University and an in-house clinician here at the DNA Company. And again, I am honored to be co-hosting this webinar with our own clinical director, Dr. Tracy Steady Hardcastle. How are you this evening?
I'm very well, Dr. Varden. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you. So you want to tell everybody why they're here tonight and what we're going to talk about?
Absolutely. So it's an interesting topic because I remember being a child and watching my grandmother start out taking a couple of medications and then a couple more being added and a couple more being added to manage the side effects of the first four and thinking, wow, that seems like a lot of pills, right? And I take a lot of supplements, so I kind of do the same thing, but it's different. And so, we're wondering, is there another way? Does starting to take a medication mean you have to take it forever? Is there another path other than medication? Could you reduce the amount of medication that you're taking? Drugs can be life-saving, but if it's addressing a symptom rather than the root cause, is there another, perhaps, better way to do this, Dr. Varden? And so that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, and I can definitely sympathize with you when you were talking about seeing your grandmother taking medications and then more medications to help with the side effects of the first set, because I personally was right in the middle of all that. After a car accident I had, got rear-ended by a 3/4 ton pickup truck with a snowplow, which totally disabled me.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
And the plethora of medications that were prescribed to me, I felt like I was a walking pharmacy. It was ridiculous. I was taking, oh gosh, probably around 20 different medications and the same type of thing. We're talking a lot of pain medications, a lot of narcotics. I had neuropathy and other issues. So taking a lot of targeted medications for that, prescriptions. But then the other half was to help with the side effects of the first half. I mean, it was awful, and I really felt like I was a slave to that medication. It's difficult. I would love to know. I'm going to throw this out there for our audience members. Put a 1 in the chat if you are currently taking a prescription medication or you have taken prescription medications in the past. Just toss a 1.
And also, please do fill out our poll. We'll be going over that shortly, and we would like to know, who's in our audience, and how we can best serve you this evening. Um, I don't know if you
Yeah.
know this or not, Dr. Varden, but the
Well,
FDA estimates that adverse drug reaction cause over 2 million hospitalizations each year in the United States. So that's a lot of harm that seems like maybe it could be preventable. Um, so let's take a look at our poll, and then I want to really get right into what are some of the medications that seem like they could be optional if we handled them by knowing things about people's genes. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and go over the poll questions. Question number 1: are you currently on long-term prescription medications? And tied for yes, 1 and no is at 36%, and then 29% yes, more than 1. Number 2, have you ever heard of pharmacogenetic PGX testing? 14% have, 36 have but haven't done it yet, and 50 but have but not done it, and sorry, and 50% have not heard of it at all. So we're excited to tell you all about that this evening. Number 3, how confident are you that lifestyle and genetics can reduce medication needs? 54% say very confident. 29% say somewhat confident, 14% not sure, and 4% not confident. So sometimes I wish that we could do a poll after the webinar too and see if people's answers change at all. Question 4, which outcome would mean the most for you? 11% said fewer prescriptions, 21% said safer treatments with fewer side effects, 68% said a more natural approach, and nobody said other. And question 5, what would you most like to gain from this session? 29% said strategies to reduce dependency on medications, 18% a clearer understanding of PGX testing, 32% said DNA-driven supplement and lifestyle insights, and 21% said inspiration and motivation to take control of my health. And I can't think of anyone more suited to do inspiration and motivation than Dr. Varden. So Dr. Varden.
You are sweet.
And truthful. So what are some chronic conditions that you can think of that have medications for them that genes affect either how the medication works for a certain percent of the population or whether or not they should even be taken by a certain percentage of the population?
Well, in my case, it was pain medications, the chronic pain of it. And thankfully, I'm not on any of those medications anymore. So yes, I was on them for 14 years. 14 years, long time to be on narcotics and other types of medications. But it just goes to show you that, yes, you can get off of them. If obviously under a doctor's supervision, okay, before I continue, I am going to say a disclaimer here that we are not telling you to get off of your medications, to start any particular medications. The information that we are giving you is educational only. This is for informational that, if you decide, which it's a good idea, to get a PGX test, which stands for pharmacogenetics, which looks at your genetics and how that works into pharmacology, prescription medications, okay? How well does your body metabolize that? And how can your genes inform you of the way that you process and how you might even react to the medications? So in any case, we are not telling you, and it's certainly outside of the scope of my practice when it comes to prescription drugs. I inform information-wise for diet, lifestyle, other aspects of holistic healthcare, biohacking, and other things on the way to support your body, even to support you to maybe even have the prescriptions that you're taking be even more efficacious. But you please do not make any decisions on current medications that you're being prescribed without discussing it with your prescribing physician. So just
And that
putting that.
includes even if you get a PGX test, don't take the test and then decide on your own, I'm just going to stop cold turkey taking this medication. Instead, you can bring your PGX test results to your provider and show them and say, this says that this might not be the ideal thing, and it gives suggestions for other things that might be better for me, and see what they say, and we are happy to support people in figuring out how to have those conversations with their prescribing physicians. So.
Absolutely. And that's really important to know. But either way, because I've worked with several clients that are on medications and supporting them in those foundational aspects of diet, lifestyle, stress management, and hormones, knowing the way that their hormones are working and how to best support that through the diet, lifestyle, etc. They've been able to wean down with working with their doctor. They've informed them and, we're working with them, but they were feeling so much better that they ended up where their medication, they weren't needing as much and even being able to discontinue under the guidance of their prescribing doctor. So yes, it is absolutely possible.
So when you think of these things, Dr. Varden, what are some genes that you think that show up again and again on the PGX test or that are in the DNA 360 that also can impact how someone might respond to particular medications?
Okay. Well, I would say that one in particular, because cardiovascular disease is number one killer. Okay. Uh, this is something that deals with inflammation, issues with heart. Well, in our cardiovascular report for our DNA 360, there are a couple of genes there that significantly impact or could inform someone of drugs that get prescribed for cardiovascular problems, namely increased cholesterol and LDLs, the low density lipoproteins. And that prescription, I'm sure all of you have heard of, statins. So when we're talking about statins, the one particular gene that is not just in the PGX, but also in the DNA 360 is the SLCO1B1 gene. And this gene actually looks at your statin metabolization. So how well do you do that? Well, if you have a T allele, that's a normal allele. That is your wild type. So you metabolize statins. By the way, statins, are natural in the body. Okay. It's not just an outside medication that you're taking in. But how well do you metabolize that? So T is in Tom, is your normal allele. The C is in cat is a dysregulated variant, and that can cause some issues on how well that you metabolize those statins. So, that's something that you'd want to speak with your cardiologist or your prescribing doctor and say, hey, genetically, I am not metabolizing statin drugs very well. So if you're on it, maybe you can have a conversation and see if there's something else that you can do. Taking that a step further, the ApoE gene, okay, also the ApoA2 in the DNA 360 reports. Those two genes are not in the PGX report. Those are very specific to the metabolization of drugs, okay? But how you can help yourself, how you can understand your body to see, hey, do I have a genetic propensity to maybe have higher cholesterol, higher LDL numbers? That would be looking at the ApoE, which works with lipid transport, fat metabolism, and that actually can be reflective in if you are dysregulated, meaning that you have an ApoE4, that you probably do have a little bit higher cholesterol levels on your blood work or your LDLs. And then the ApoA2 you'll find in the diet nutrition section of the reports. And that also deals with lipids. Actually, that one is more associated with HDLs. But is associated for diet nutrition because it can impact fat intake to fat gain. So those are a couple of genes that you can actually take a look at, that being aware of it, you can make the decision for diet and lifestyle changes that can help naturally lower your cholesterol numbers, your LDLs. So maybe you don't ever have to go on a statin.
Very good point, Dr. Varden. So, thinking back again about the PGX test, there was a systematic review. It's going to be one of those language nights tonight for me, and meta-analysis um, comparing PGX guided prescribing with standard care, meaning just prescribing based on looking at the patient and their labs and deciding to prescribe whatever is known as the standard of care at that time. And the results were that 54.7% of PGX guided patients had medication changed, and hospital admissions were only 11.5% in that group versus 20.1% in the standard care group. So there was a 43% reduction in all-cause admissions, largely due to fewer adverse drug events and mismatched therapies. So, I mean, those statistics are pretty impressive. It feels to me like anyone who's going to go on medication should have access to this test and be able to bring this to their doctor and say, you know, this is what I want, is to have you treat me based on my genetics. Doesn't that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the thing we have to realize is that for chronic conditions, allopathic medicine really fails. Medications, things like that. You did not get to that point of having a chronic condition by the absence or lack of pharmaceutical medication. So that doesn't necessarily, your chronic condition, a prescription drug doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to reverse that. I mean, at times, again, it can definitely be helpful. But you have to be careful to keep looking and focusing on the branches and the leaves, okay, using the tree analogy. Because allopathic medicine, they are a diagnose and prescribe. They look at what your symptoms are. They determine, okay, you've got anxiety. Okay, we're going to put you on some anti-anxiety medication. All right, instead of looking, why do you have that anxiety? They're looking at those branches and leaves and giving you some paint, to paint that leaf green because it's turning brown. All right, instead of shifting that thought process, like what functional medicine does, and looking at the root cause. Why are you having the anxiety in the first place? And asking a lot of questions and digging deeper. And this is where genetics can come into play. So I'm seeing in the chat, like, significance, how significant is the MTHFR gene mutation with specific drugs? Well, actually MTHFR, that does not specifically break down the drugs that are in the PGX report that we happen to have, which, by the way, for the PGX report that the DNA company offers, which you can find on our website, thednacompany.com. You can go to tests and take a look at that. We are actually offering a special for the next 24 hours. All right. So based on the information that you are garnering tonight in this webinar, if you purchase a PGX report from us within the next 24 hours, we will offer you a free 30-minute consult review on that report. But you will have to make sure that you email CEO@thednacompany.com and make sure that you submit your order number. So that's going to give you a little something, because I want to make sure to give you guys some time to get that report if you're interested. So getting back to MTHFR has certain pathways, certain clearances, but that gene in and of itself does not affect the metabolization specifically to the pharmaceutical drugs. Now, a gene in the methylation pathway does. That is COMT, C-O-M-T. Now, the COMT gene is included in the PGX because that is what actually puts that methyl group onto the substrate, onto the toxin, the pharmaceutical drug, to help break it down and clear it from the system. So that one is actually looked at, but MTHFR in itself, that specific one, is not. So I wanted to mention, because I had brought up anxiety, and there's an entire section on anti-anxiety medications, on antipsychotics. And there are certain genes that are more prominent in the breakdown of those particular drugs. Those would be like the CYP2 D6, like D as in David 6, the CYP2C19 gene, and there are others. So you will see those in the PGX reports. And it really takes a look at the essence of how well do you break these down? Because if you are not breaking them down very well, or depending on how you are breaking them down, certain drugs may not be the best for you. There can be other kinds that are much more effective. So we're talking like for antidepressants, like I was talking about, for anxiety and depression, bupropion. Okay. So that's a particular drug. There's actually two different genes that help to break that down. And that's listed right in the PGX report. Okay. So it really can show you, okay, you're okay with this particular drug. This one might have a caution, definitely look into this. And then there's another column that says, yeah, you might want to change your recommendation. So really good information that you can share with your doctor, to help best have the prescriptions that they want to prescribe be the best for you.
It's interesting, Dr. Varden. I don't think that our audience is necessarily reflective of this, but on average, each adult American is on 3.5 medications. So that means that some are on a lot more and some are on fewer, but 3.5 is still significant because together they may have side effects, and then people, like we had talked about before, may end up taking more of them. So in the chat, if you're wondering what kinds of medications does the PGX talk about, then there is a sample report that you can take a look at to see if the medications that you're most interested in are on it, and for future reference in case you're ever considering a medication. So what other genes do you think of when you think of prevention and supplementation? Because one of the things that we really like to do here at the DNA Company is really tailor supplements to the person based on their genetics. We have a line called Black Label, and some of the really great things about it are it can be specific to you. It's very clean. We know what's in it, and we don't have fillers and all of some other not appetizing things that can be found in other supplements. So can you talk to me a little bit about prevention and supplements, and how all of the information in our testing can help guide people toward taking supplements to prevent having to be on medications?
Absolutely. And I want to mention that, with all of those medications that I was on, like around 20 medications for 14 years, that I felt a slave to that. Now that I'm not taking any medications, but I am taking a lot of supplements. But the interesting thing is, I don't feel a slave to them because I have more energy. I have, I feel better. I'm optimizing my health. I mean, obviously, it's not just supplements, because that is supplemental. I really did a major change in my diet, in my exercise, in my thought processing, and it was really a whole life change. And then the supplements started coming on to just enhance that. So really what it is, it's looking at, where are your weaknesses? Where do I need help? Because again, a lot of the things that we are talking about are chronic conditions, okay? Gut issues, which can affect your immune system, which can affect your brain health, having, like I said, anxiety, having pain, chronic pain, okay? And all of these other things, there's always that underlying cause. Well, the major underlying cause of these chronic conditions? Inflammation. Inflammation and your mitochondria not working efficiently. So really one of the main things that I look at when I am helping a client is I look at, how are your detox pathways? How are your metabolic genes and pathways working? And so I am looking, one of the first places I look, detox. So they're your anti-inflammatory reports. Okay. This is where you want to go in your DNA 360 reports. And I am looking at that methylation pathway. I'm looking, how fast are you clearing? Like with the COMT gene, are you slow? Are you moderate? Are you fast? How is that working? I'm looking at your glutathione conjugation pathway. I'm looking at your antioxidation pathway, the SOD2 and GPX, how well that it's removing these toxins from the mitochondria, because that's going to directly affect its ability to function. I also look at the TCF7L2, for insulin, because that insulin reaction and its ability to deal with the glucose in your body, if it's not working very well and you have higher glucose running around and it's attaching to proteins and you're getting inflammation. Okay. So that's a major thing that you want to do, because when you start helping eliminate the inflammation, lowering the inflammation burden, you start being able to heal more quickly. And when you're healing more quickly, those chronic conditions start clearing up. So those are some of the major ones that I look at, that I start focusing on.
And when it comes to Black Label,
Mhm.
people can actually make appointments to have someone help them create a custom formula that's just for them. So that is based on their genetics.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a really, rather than taking, a wide variety of things from different brands where you may or may not know what's in them and it's not based on you. For instance, it's really hard. A lot of people with their methylation may need a methylated folate but not B12 or vice versa. And a lot of things have either everything methylated or nothing methylated, right, Dr. Varden? And so trying
Right.
to figure all of that out can be a little bit confusing sometimes. Whereas if you have a Black Label consultation, someone can make you a formula that's just for you.
Yeah. And I mean, we also want to be clear that, for your Black Label, okay, first of all, we don't have every ingredient under the sun available to throw in there. There are precise blends that are included. And these blends are built upon the structure of your functional genomics, of our reports, dealing with different areas or the weaknesses you may have, where you can help support those. And it is based on your gender, on your height, your weight, your age, and your genetics. So it really is very personalized for you. It's not like you can go, oh, I have some left over, I'm sharing it with you. No, it's not meant for them. It is meant exactly for you. And they are made of the highest ingredients, no fillers, no extra junk in it. Our team really has done a very fastidious job in making sure that the sources for every one of our ingredients are of top quality. So go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is the best time or only time to take the PGX test if you're considering taking a medication, or is it something that you can take it at any point in your life, just in case you suddenly have to be making a quick decision, or to help inform family members that, hey, this came up for me, you might want to get this tested. Like, in an ideal situation, could just anyone take it at any point in their life?
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, the nice thing is because it's based on your genetics, that information isn't going to change per se. Now, there's a nuance in there, and I do have to, double click on that, because that although your genes don't change, it is important to know when your PGX is done, because pharmacology, the information that we have and that we study expands every single day. Okay. And the way that they do the research is it can take up to 20 years for the conception of a particular drug, going through all the different stages that they have to go through until it's finally approved by FDA. And it can cost like in the range of $1 billion to get a drug on the shelf. Okay. So yeah, and actually I just got an email, I think it was yesterday, from drugs.com and stuff, that of all the new drugs that the FDA just approved. I was kind of scrolling through just to, take a look at it. So the thing that is very important to understand is that during the process of when they have a drug, they have to know what genetic pathway or what genes are helping to break down or that influence the metabolism of the drugs. Okay, that's part of the process. And so there are a lot of the same genes. Okay. PGX is not like a full genome test. Okay. It doesn't look at every single gene in your genome. But the thing that's important is understanding that with all of these new drugs, after a year or so, no, the information's not going to change too much. But you may want to be aware, or have your prescribing doctor or hospital be aware that like 4 or 5 years after, there could be some differences based on the information, because there are major regulatory agencies that this information in the PGX comes from, FDA being one. There's the CPIC, which is the Clinical Pharmacogenetics Implementation Consortium. There's the Dutch Pharmacogenetics Working Group. The information provided in the PGX are from these regulatory agencies. It's not just, the pharmaceutical companies going, hey, here's this information. This is very strict information, very important information. But getting back to the original question, when should someone take it? They can take it anytime, especially if you're on medications, to help guide you and your doctor to make sure everything is working effectively for you. But also, if you're not taking any, I have several clients who are not on any medications who have taken the PGX, because you never know. If something happens, if you get into an accident, I got rear-ended in a car accident. I wasn't expecting that. But you know what? They put me on Flexeril, right away. They put me on other medications. And I did not deal well with that. I actually had an allergic reaction, urinary retention. Not fun, let me tell you. If I would have had a PGX test at that time, of course, that happened in 2001, but if I had it at that time, maybe that would have told my doctors or the hospital she shouldn't be on this. Okay.
And it tests for some kinds of anesthesia too. So if you were to have an accident and need to go in for a surgery, knowing which anesthesia, if ahead of time, may not be the best for you, could be really helpful in that situation. And then, letting your family and healthcare proxies know, can you please make sure that the hospital knows this? Because those are moments when quick action really, really matters, as you yourself know, Dr. Varden.
Oh, absolutely. And it's nice that in the PGX report, I mean, yeah, it can be like 40 some odd pages. Okay. It's not like you're going to be carrying that around in your purse or in your back pocket, with you. But I would make copies, bring it to your prescribing doctor, so they have it on file. Bring it to the hospital that you frequent, or that, hopefully you don't frequent a hospital too often, but that is your regional hospital that you might go to in case you have an emergency. Okay. So they have it on file. But within the PGX report, there's actually a single sheet that summarizes all of your genes and their variants, their particular uh, genomic presentation. So that's a snapshot, because again, those are not going to change. So you can keep that piece of paper, keep that in your wallet, keep it in your purse. So that way, if there is an accident and you don't happen to be in your region, a lot of times, especially if you're unconscious, they will go through to see if there's any information there that they need to be aware of. And if they find that, they'll be like, oh, she's got this, and they can hand that off to someone, who could make use of that information. And hopefully the doctors and more are implementing the information of genetics into their practice, that they can take a look at that and assess what type of medications, and actually do some lookup on that. And because I've had this conversation with several clients before. So.
And it's also nice because for non-emergency situations, it is also in the app. So if you do the test, it's in
Right.
your app. You carry it around with you on your phone everywhere you go. If you're bored
Yes.
in the line, look at your PGX report, learn something about yourself for a couple of minutes and then put it away. You actually you can carry it around with you. And I highly recommend getting the DNA Way app, because it's when you come to see us in webinars, you can flip back and forth through different reports pretty quickly. When you're trying to explain something about your genetics to your friends and family and they don't know what you're talking about, you can show them. It's right there in the app.
Absolutely. And, when we're talking about medications, um, they're not bad. There is a use for them. I am not anti-prescription medication. Okay. I just don't want to have to be on them the rest of my life if I don't have to. Now, granted, I will say, because I've talked about this before in other webinars, that, for what was it? 10 years, I was not on any prescription medication. After I got off that plethora of prescriptions back in 2014, 2015, none. I took no prescriptions, except I recently started on hormone replacement therapy. So yes, those are prescriptions, but I don't really, necessarily consider per se, I don't group them into the whole, other type of medications, because I am replacing something that I did have naturally. And they are bioidentical. So, because I did notice a couple of comments saying that, oh, I'm on hormone therapy. So yes, that is a prescription. But when we're talking about medications and administration, okay, we have pharmacologists and other things that work here in the DNA company. Dr. Stephanie Nielsen being one. And there are 5 R's of medication administration: the right patient, right medication, right dose, at the right time, via the right route. Very important. That is what you are talking about when you talk about personalized medicine. And the PGX report can be very essential in that, because that gives you more insight in the right medications at the right dose, if that medication, is for you, and making sure that you are the right patient for that medication to begin with. So I definitely wanted to highlight that medications have a place. Absolutely. but we need to do what we can to retain our own agency and to empower ourselves to have our terrain, okay, the soil of the tree, as clean, as pure as we can make it, so we don't have issues with our branches and leaves dying, breaking, dying, and things falling apart.
So, Dr. Varden, if someone is on a medication and it
Mhm.
happens to be giving them side effects, even if it's not one that's necessarily not great for them per the PGX report, but that they're just it's causing certain issues that may be caused by their genetics. Um, are there ways that knowing your genes and which pathways might be impacted by this medication that they can take lifestyle steps in order to help their body to process the medication better, have fewer side effects, and overall feel better so that they're not then taking that next medication in order to counteract the side effects?
Oh, no. Well, yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about, making sure that your terrain is as, that soil is as clean as possible, because that eliminates or lessens the probability of any type of contraindications. And I'm not talking about just drug to drug interactions. Um, but say you have heavy metal poisoning, and or you've got a toxic load, mold toxins, or that you're more susceptible to holding on to those toxins, you're not clearing as well, and those toxins are now causing interactions with the drugs that you're taking and creating, some of these other strange side effects, but yet your PGX report, says, oh, well, the metabolization, it looks good. I shouldn't be having, issues. This is something that Dr. Stephanie says, is that every medication has a side effect. It does. So it's just a matter of the severity of which your genes can impact, or the terrain of the body, like I said, because yes, it's looking at particular genes or pathways for the metabolism of that drug, but it's not looking at the overall impact, that allostatic load that your body has. Allostatic load being all of the stresses that you have that accumulate. And I'm not talking about just chemical, I'm also talking about, emotional, biological, all of the stresses in your life can impact the way that you process drugs, food, information, whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
And some things are, you take a statin for cholesterol, but some medications are given to people for things that are more like a syndrome, where there's a collection of symptoms that may have to do with pain and digestion and headaches and things like that, that a doctor may say, okay, well, let's try this medication to see if we can alleviate your symptoms. Whereas if you're going from the root cause perspective, maybe we can help you figure out what's causing that, all of those symptoms. It could
Right.
be, 3 genes and 5 lifestyle things that have to that have to be looked at in order for you to feel like a totally different person. And I think that that's really important to think about, because not all physicians are keeping that in mind. That whole old saying, when you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I
Looks like
think
a
I said that
nail.
right. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so if all they have is medication, that's all that they can offer you,
Right.
right? Whereas if someone can offer you a look into yourself and what your genes are setting you up for and what your life is putting on top of your genes, and then unwinding that mystery that is you, then you can have other options other than being treated like a nail, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we have to remember the organs of detoxification. We got to love them. We have to support them. The liver being that largest, that's the largest organ that is doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to detoxification. And it is what is processing and what is going on when I had mentioned those different detoxification pathways that are in the anti-inflammatory report. That's being done at a cellular level in the liver. So do you have sluggish bile? Is your lymphatics, are they flowing and draining? Are you pooping? If you're not pooping, guess what? You're reabsorbing those toxins. And we're talking about drug metabolites as well. You don't want to be reabsorbing that. So if you want to help yourself out, make sure you're going to the bathroom 2 to 3 times a day. Okay. Yes, that's a normal, healthy, at the very least once a day. But you should be going to the bathroom regularly and getting rid of those metabolites. Also with your urine, because a lot of drugs pass through and are excreted through the urine. Are you drinking enough water? Are you, moving your body to get the movement of, these metabolites moving along throughout the body? It was really interesting because when I was on all that medication, oh my gosh, I'll tell you what, anyone who has had pain meds, what's the main thing that is a consequence of taking narcotics? Constipation. Oh, you know what? I need some love here from audience. If you've been on pain medication that caused constipation, put a 1 in the chat. Don't let me feel alone in this. Put a 1 in the chat if you've ever had to deal with that. It's thank you. Thank you. This makes me feel better. Not that, in your pain, I'm sorry, but yeah, this is real. And when you get down to, having to deal with these daily things, and I can only imagine the amount of toxins I was reabsorbing, because remember, it's not just the toxins of these pharmaceutical metabolites. It's all the toxins that your body is producing, all of the waste products that get excreted through defecation. Those were being reabsorbed. And it can get painful. It's not fun. So having known that and knowing what I know now, you can preemptively help yourself with that. If you know that you have to go on pain medication, say you're having a surgery. Okay. My ex-husband just had rotor cuff surgery. Well, we were prepping his body before the surgery and post-surgically. So I was making sure he had the right supplements, that he was doing, that he was staying hydrated, that, he was having as much movement as he could do, because his legs still worked fine, so he could walk. And then after surgery, when they gave him the pain meds, that, giving him things, to help the bowels, whether it's drinking a tea, Smooth Moves tea, staying better hydrated, doing the red light therapy, doing the things so that way he didn't have to be on those pain meds any longer than necessary. And his healing has been exponentially increased. Even his surgeon was like, wow, this is looking really good. This is, you're healing so much faster. And he felt better. I mean, granted, yeah, it's still very, very painful. But there are always things that can be done and can be even more personalized through the knowledge of your DNA to see where your weakness is, so we know where to support you better.
So we've got a bunch of questions in the Q&A, Dr. Varden, as we round the top of the hour. Do you have any last minute thoughts that you want to share with our audience this evening before we get to their questions?
Actually, there is something, because this question has come up a lot from clients and other people, is the PGX. I get asked, do they tell me which supplements I should take? And that is a no. Okay. There are limitations to the testing. Okay. It does not tell you efficacy or whether or not a supplement is good for you or not. It does not tell you anything about drug to drug interactions. It doesn't tell you about contraindications. It also does not include lifestyle factors because it's only looking at your genetics. Just like with our DNA 360, you're not inputting information in that test about all of your different lifestyle, history, stresses, everything else. Okay. It's only giving you the information for your genetics. And then if you want to understand, have your DNA 360 or the PGX translated, okay, more so DNA 360 translated on, what do I do about this information and how does lifestyle, work into that? That's why you come to one of us. That's why you come work with a practitioner who can integrate that information into all of your background, into your intake form, history, traumas, all of the stuff, because that's where the rubber really meets the road and the precision can really come. So that's what I wanted to say.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. Let's get into our first question. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm looking for the question in this, but it might just be a story um, about what taking our DNA test helped someone to figure out. So Norma says she's taken thyroid since she was age 13. She was sure that the cold she felt in her extremities was due to not taking enough thyroid. She suffered bone density problems from taking it and also heart issues from taking too much. And then she took her DNA test and found that she had a suboptimal gene for body heat. And since heart tests with cardiologists, she did a reduction in thyroid medication and she's better. Um, and the episodes of racing heart are not evident. So it sounds like that information was helpful to you in terms of knowing yourself better and being able to advocate for care for yourself. And so that's really great to hear. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Norma.
I see the question from Susan, and actually, we already answered some of it. But she was asking, "Is this for someone who's not currently taking medications?" Which we said, yes, absolutely. And what medications are included in the report that would be helpful to know when someone is in an emergency situation? And this is something Dr. Steady had said. Anesthesia. There are drugs in there that are oftentimes used in anesthesia. Also, medications that can be prescribed post-surgically for help with recovery.
Yeah, and pain.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times if there's an emergency, you would be in pain, and knowing which ones are better or worse could be really helpful.
Yeah, and those are in the report under analgesics. So these are your oxycodone, hydrocodone, ibuprofen, methadone, those types of things. And actually, tramadol. I was on all of them at one time or another over that 14 years. So yeah.
So, Dr. Varden, we have a question from Jolene. What genes on the 360 report reflect insights on thyroid for my hypothyroid, lifestyle changes to consider to minimize the need for prescription?
Okay. For thyroid, again, it's more so looking at not just hormones, but looking at your detoxification pathways and those related to the gut. Because oftentimes, thyroid, hypothyroid, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, as a autoimmune issue has to deal with your immune system. And this is where the your gut your gut is mainly your immune system. Okay. So we want to see, how is your gut, the genes like the GSTM1, your glutathione conjugation pathway, very important, because that really influences the oxidative stress in the thyroid and the liver, where the hormone conversion of T4 to T3 happen. Okay. The methylation pathway. Again, your detox pathways are so important. Methylation, those genes influence the conversion of folate and B12, cobalamin, okay? Methylation is required for thyroid hormone activation and detoxification of excess hormones. So if you are suboptimal, uh, in that pathway activity, that can worsen hypothyroid symptoms, and possibly increase a need for prescription. Looking at, I'd already mentioned about the hormones, obviously, because steroid hormone metabolism, estrogen being a major driver of thyroid hormone binding problems. That's something to look at. Cardiovascular, like the NOS3 ACE, because poor nitric oxide or vascular issues can affect delivery of the thyroid hormones to the tissue. Stress, mood, circadian rhythm, vitamin D. Vitamin D is critical for thyroid autoimmunity. So a lot of them, a lot of them.
Thank you, Dr. Varden. All right, Christy is asking, her child has something going on with their kidneys and heavily uses prednisone to manage symptoms, and is currently being treated with another medication and may in the future end up having to use more, and wondering how would this testing be beneficial for someone with this condition. So kidneys are a major way of detoxing from the body, and some medications are more difficult on the kidneys, more taxing than others. But even if the medication is metabolized through the liver, if your genetics are not great for that medication and it puts more of a strain on your liver, that's putting a strain on your kidneys just further down the line. And so we want to, what the point of doing it would be to make sure that everything that is possible to know about what is best for your child or worst for your child in terms of medications, you would have those answers. And the doing the DNA 360, if they haven't already, would also be beneficial for just trying to keep inflammation in check, and to just, as Dr. Varden was talking about, keeping the terrain, keeping the root of the tree as healthy as possible. So I do think that there would be benefit for someone in terms of protecting kidneys. All right, Dr. Varden. Mary is asking, I was taking broccoli, a supplement. Well, we know that supplement. For its ability to increase BDNF, but I heard Justin say if you have a fast COMT already, which I do, you would not want to take this because it moves things along quicker. Is this so? I really wanted the BDNF, but will not if it will cause expensive pee.
Okay. So with this, it's a really insightful question. And I want to answer this both based on functional genomics as well as that nutritional biochemistry side, because broccoli, it's stabilized from a form of sulforaphane, okay? And that's the bioactive compound of broccoli sprouts. It's really working through like NRF2 activation, because actually I was on the webinar with him when we talked about this. And that really turns on your antioxidant response. It's a phase 2 detox support. It upregulates BDNF. It has anti-inflammatory effects. And when we're talking about COMT, okay, so your concern you mentioned comes from how COMT, C-O-M-T, the catechol O-methyltransferase variant, affects metabolism of dopamine, norepinephrine, and estrogen metabolites. where if it's slow, dopamine lingers longer, risk of anxiety, overwhelm. If it's fast, it clears those too quickly, leading to lower dopamine tone, sometimes lowering motivation. But sulforaphane does not directly speed up COMT. Okay. What it does is it activates the detoxification pathways, including those that overlap with COMT with its workload. Okay. Methylation, estrogen metabolism. So if you already have a fast COMT, adding sulforaphane doesn't make COMT faster. Instead, it could just increase the demand for methylation. You know, but I wouldn't worry so much that sulforaphane accelerates COMT, but that in a fast COMT, a person who has fast COMT with weak methylation, the benefit to cost ratio might not be as strong. So you might feel like you're spending extra supplements, or spending extra on supplements to maintain balance, that expensive P comment. But we're really, talking about bottom line, broccoli can still be very helpful. Okay. The caution Justin raised is about resource balance, not that it negates BDNF benefits. With your fast comp, just make sure methylation is well supported. So the forms of your B vitamins, your folate and your cobalamin, make sure that you have the right forms, make sure that you are supporting it well, and watch your energy and motivation levels as feedback. So, and that's really important because a lot of people have questions about COMT, about methylation, and there can be nuances in there.
Excellent. All right, our next question is from Janet. What is the impact, if any, if your DNA report indicates you should take the adenosyl version of B12, that's better for you, but you were instead given the methylated version of B12? Do you want to answer this?
Sure. Okay. That's maybe at first you had more energy, you felt better, things were okay, but maybe after a while, things that you would feel due to overmethylation would be anxiety, agitation, insomnia. So pay attention to see if you have any of those symptoms that if you have and you're like, oh, what else was going on? It may be because of overmethylation. Not saying that it is, just that put that on your radar to be aware of, and you may want to make sure that you have switched the form that you are taking.
And that would be similar if your SHMT1 is suboptimal and you are taking methylated folate. Just to throw that out there and kind of round it out.
Correct.
Okay. So we have a question from Margaret. Does the PGX look at over-the-counter meds like plain Tylenol that could also be prescribed for various conditions at times?
I do know it does ibuprofen. I don't have all the medications it has on there memorized. It's got morphine. I'm looking at it right now just to check.
It has many common ones, but
Yeah,
I mean not everything, but it
correct.
has
Uh,
many.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is only like 40 some odd pages. If anyone has ever heard of the physician's desk reference, which is a compendium of all of the, medications, prescriptions, it comes out every year. That thing is like a Bible. Okay. It is huge. So obviously, we're not going to be handing you a Bible every time. So no, it does not list everything, but it lists a lot of the most common or often prescribed, and the genes. A lot of other drugs use those same gene or pathways for metabolization. So if you have a physician who is knowledgeable in the realm of genetics, they'll know what to do with it. They'll know, even if it's not listed in the PGX report, they can just go to that last page, look at what it is, and then look it up themselves. So
Perfect. Barb is asking, is there a test for hypothyroid? So you would get a blood test and do a full thyroid panel and see what that shows. There, our testing does not directly. I mean, when we have patients, you know, we can order blood tests, but the DNA 360 and the PGX are not testing for hypothyroid specifically. That would be something that would be ordered because that needs to also be monitored over time. So that's not a one-shot deal. The DNA 360 and the PGX are both about the genes that you were born with and how the world interacts with them. Whereas a thyroid test would be more of a thing that you check fairly regularly. Okay, what do we have left, Dr. Varden?
let's see. I'm trying to see if there's a question in this other one from Barb. What genetic test can we take? Okay, so she's asking, she says that I have a very difficult time metabolizing the thyroid drugs since they changed what's in them. I've been on the natural ones, not the medical ones. And I think you mean synthetic, which didn't do anything for me at all. What genetic test can we take? Okay, I just see in the gut test, but haven't gotten it back yet. I wrote in today. Okay, so really, again, when you're talking about pharmaceuticals, it depends on if you're saying the thyroid drug, generally a drug indicates that it is a prescription that only a medical doctor or a prescribing physician can write for you. There are different supplements that can be given to help. And Tracy, you can probably speak more into this, like in Chinese medicine, using certain herbs or whatever that can help with thyroid function. Obviously, those are not, FDA approved pharmaceutical drugs that would be in the physician's desk reference, that would be in a PGX report. Okay, so I would need a little bit more clarity, but regardless of that, when you're talking about a genetic test to take, the PGX, anything that would be prescribed by a physician that has a genetic component, as far as that they have done research where here is the gene that metabolizes this drug, and that is what this can offer, to be able to take a look and say, hey, my genes, this is how I've got variants. Maybe I shouldn't take this. Maybe I should. So I hope that is a good enough answer.
And Christine is asking if there will be a training on this report similar to what Kashif is doing on the DNA 360. And that's not something that we have in the works at this time. We do 3 webinars a week, so we try to answer as many of people's questions as we can during these 3 nights a week that we're here hanging out with you and trying to give you as much information as we can. But we will keep in mind that that is something that you would love.
I see in the chat, I was kind of going through and I saw something about, Mary was saying many medications are generic and have different fillers in them. How do you navigate? First of all, the PGX, they list it in generic forms and then give the trade names. For example, torvastatin. Okay, that's the generic name for Lipitor. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard Lipitor before, but you haven't heard atorvastatin. Okay, so it does list those, and it will group those. So that information is available in the PGX. And just a reminder, if you are interested in getting the PGX, If you think it would be good for you, that information to know, it'd be good. Okay. We are offering a free review of that, a free 30-minute review of your PGX report with a clinician here at the DNA company if you order it within the next 24 hours. What you have to do, though, is you have to make sure to email ceo@thednacompany.com with your order number, and that will be flagged to make sure that you get a free review. All right.
Well,
And our Vanny, thank you very much for dropping that in the chat again for everyone. So it's available.
and that is all of our questions. We breezed through those. Sometimes, 3 questions can take us a half an hour, Dr. Varden. Um, um, so do you have any parting thoughts for our audience this evening before we bid them good night?
Yeah, really what it is here, I want to reiterate, we are not anti-medication, okay? What we want you to realize is that you can actually help yourself, help your body, so that way you don't have to have as much medication, maybe not get on medication, maybe get off of medication, but help yourself to be optimized, to be healthier by doing lifestyle changes, nutrition changes, stress management, personalized based on your genetics. So that way you don't have to be a slave to that medication like I felt like I was for 14 years until I had finally had enough and said, I'm getting off this treadmill and I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to make the differences. And I'll tell you, it absolutely changed my life. And I will say that when I had always been in really good shape, good, healthy weight. When I was on all that medications, couldn't exercise, dealing with all of that, I had gained like 85 pounds. Not fun. And with that and the pain, and I was just like, nope, I've had enough. I'm going to figure this out. And that's when I went back to school and became a doctor, became a PhD and figured it out. And it was on that journey that I decided, nope, I'm changing my diet. I'm changing my lifestyle. I am going to make sure I get better sleep. I'm going to make sure I lower my stress. Was it overnight? No. But I did it. And within five years, I was not using a cane anymore to walk. Like I said, I was not on any medications anymore. And I was able to climb 38 mountains in 1 year. And I had been in a wheelchair for a while. So I can tell you, clean up your soil and terrain. Take back your agency. Know what you have to do. Know your blueprint. And get yourself better. So you don't have to be a slave to the medications, but take it if when you need it, when you need a little extra help, it's there. So you can do it.
See, I called it at the beginning. Didn't I say no one could possibly be more inspiring than Dr. Varden? I said that at the beginning of the webinar and you delivered, as you always do. Thank you all for being here, especially you, Dr. Varden, but thank you to our audience members for your questions and your feedback and your participation. And I encourage you to get your testing done so that you can empower yourself and inspire other people the way that Dr. Varden has inspired all of us here tonight. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Steady. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.